Isn't that a glorious view?
Definitely.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Beard Blather 255, believe it or not. Let the rebuilding begin. We made it. 4 years of a terrorist empowering allies targeting pedophiles, forgiving, border destroying justice system, neutering little creep with Alzheimer's, with a God complex who thinks he can amend the Constitution by acclamation. 4 long years. Everything we predicted 4 years ago, from lawlessness to rising terrorism, to the dismantling of supply lines, to inflation, stagnation, to the corruption of government, has come to pass. No point dwelling on it. Time to rebuild. Starting at 12:01 p.m. on Monday, let's clear the riff-raff out of D.C. From notorious assholes and criminals like Austin, Mayorkas, Becerra, Levine, Butt-e-gieg, Sullivan, Rice, Blinken, et al., all the way to the clowning chief. And let's make America great again. Let our enemies know we are back, and our allies know we have their back. Time, ladies and gentlemen, to clean house. This is Saul Montes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information, coming to you from my golden cage in Florida. And this gentleman over here, still hiding his mutilated beard, for those who don't know why the mask is on, is none other than Thomas Victor. You have to take my word for it, since his face is covered. I assure you, he is Thomas Victor, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers, and so many more things. Lately, he's becoming an expert in smoke inhalation, an involuntary expert at that. But what the heck? California is such a wonderful place. It requires of its citizen the acquisition of novel and variegated abilities, like how to smell smoke and survive after, what, 2 weeks? I have a question for you before we even start, Thomas.
Uh-huh.
All of this carbon going into the upper atmosphere around California replaces how many years of onerous impositions on the citizens of California to curtail carbon from cars and farts from cows?
Yeah, I mean, this has been pointed out every time there's a fire. You know, a few years ago we lost an entire town. It burned to the ground, and there were hundreds of deaths. And it was pointed out that fire alone more than made up for whatever stupid savings the state was trying to make in carbon exhalation, I guess. But the thing about all this is that the current government is lying about everything. Mel Gibson went on a ride along with a firefighter, and he said in most of the Palisades they ran out of water from the hydrants immediately.
Yep.
And you know, okay, they're lying, and then they're indignant that they're being criticized. And
yes,
one of our senators.
Don't you dare point out that the lack of water in the hydrants was the dryness of the Santa Ynez Reservoir.
One of our senators is a former aerial firefighter, and he said that this is inexcusable, that multiple states have had exactly the same thing happen, from Hawaii to Nevada to you name it. And so he said, for California to be completely unprepared, it's inexcusable. And what what happened in the state was that they were spending all their money on their little pet, the homeless industrial complex and the illegal industrial complex.
Yeah. Let's face it, they were spending it on their own mansions.
And they were keeping their fingers crossed that nothing bad would happen while on their watch. And, the worst happened. And now their only defense is you can't criticize Karen Bass because she's a black lesbian, and you can't criticize Gavin Newsom for some reason
because he's a white lesbian.
He's a white lesbian. I don't know. There was a man on the radio who was a former leftist. The Democrats lost him in Trump's first term because for the first time in his life, and this guy said that he always voted leftist because everyone else did. And he saw his friends foaming at the mouth over Trump, and he couldn't figure out what is going on here. That everything's going great in terms of our economy and our national security, and all his friends were insane. And he said that the fire is the last straw for so many people that he predicts a major swing over to the Republican Party in the upcoming elections. So we'll see.
Yeah, and if there is no such swing, they can go fuck themselves. Who cares? I think that we have to oppose the federal government paying for anything in California. If Californians can misplace $24 billion of their homeless, feed the needy NGOs programs, if they can pay for healthcare for illegals, if they can pay for all the shit they're paying and lose all the money they're losing, they don't need anybody's help.
Well, they lost 24 billion that was earmarked for homeless, and then they misplaced another 26 billion.
Yeah.
That, they don't even know what it was for. So that's $50 billion.
That's 50 billion right there, and don't get me started with COVID.
Yeah, and
so
okay, that
they have billions and billions and billions of dollars, and you're telling me, I mean, not you, but you're telling me that a welder from Louisiana is going to have to pay taxes to make up for the money that Newscom is wasting?
Well, in terms of the COVID, it was estimated that at least 30 billion was stolen in fraudulent claims. You had prisoners doing life in prison who were making claims for reimbursement for their small businesses, and so 30 billion was stolen. So now we're up to 80 billion that was either stolen or, well, okay, when they say misplaced, they mean it was stolen. So the government has stolen $80 billion, and they're demanding money from the feds and a total lack of criticism, because this is a time for all of us to come together. And it's like, I don't want to come together with you, Mr. Newsom or Mayor Bass.
No. If President Bush organizes the greatest rescue of a city ever in the history of mankind, he failed and he congratulated the wrong person. But if these idiots empty reservoirs like Santa Ynez at the beginning of the fire season, oh no, you can't criticize them because we're all in this together. It takes a village to rebuild. Bullshit. Go fuck yourselves.
Well, see, that's a good point. The response to Hurricane Katrina was the largest and fastest in American history. The assets were all pre-positioned, and
yes, it was the largest rescue of civilians ever around the world.
Yeah. The Coast Guard alone rescued 30,000 people by helicopter. The Coast Guard only has 33,000 members, so They basically rescued the same number of people. And the helicopters, the rescue helicopters, you would have a pilot from Maine, a co-pilot from Florida, and two crew members, one from Louisiana and one from Montana. They didn't even know each other. They met when they boarded the helicopter, and they did their job.
Yes, I remember very distinctly. Katrina hit my home in Florida before it hit New Orleans. I remember every single day. I remember the assets that the Bush administration had brought immediately because they had them pre-positioned. And I remember that if there was any delay at all to go and take the people out of the stadium, for instance, was because Kathleen Fernandez Blanco decided to omit New Orleans from her emergency declaration, thereby barring federal aid to flow into the city because of her spat with Chocolate City Mayor Nagin.
Well, and this goes back to Trump's pathological refusal to defend himself. We're watching during these hearings, Pam Bondi especially. Pam Bondi is giving back 10 times what she's given by the Democrats. You know that during the election, Kamala hired a bunch of, I think the oldest was 25, and some of them were actual teenagers, to run the Twitter account of her campaign, and it was a laughing stock. Everybody would you know, they would, every single post they made had community notes correcting it.
Yes,
the same people are now running a different name. I think it's called Fact Check, and it
yes.
Today they posted a video of Pam Bondi disemboweling Adam Schiff. And it was like, everyone was like, why did you post this? This makes you look like an idiot. And it's because they're so young, they don't understand what they're watching.
They don't understand what's happened, no.
Exactly.
They're functionally illiterate.
Yeah.
They can read a transcript, but they don't know what it says.
I doubt they're even reading. I think they're watching, they see Adam Schiff going, yeah, and they go, oh, look at him, give it to her. They're not listening to words because they can't understand them.
No, anything with more than one syllable flies right over their heads.
See, if Bush had gotten really angry and given a press conference and pounded the podium and said that was the largest and fastest rescue in human history, and for you guys to say that it's a failure, this is outrageous, and I'm not going to put up with it.
It's a disservice on the people who have been risking their life and limb on the rescue that was made all the more difficult because Mayor Nagin decided not to evacuate and leave the buses flooded in parking lots and the trains departing without passengers.
Well, I remember the poor idiot Celine Dion was on Larry King, and she was sobbing, and she was saying that everybody should let the black people of New Orleans loot because this would be the first time in their lives they'd ever touched a television. So let them touch these things for once. And so you had like this nefariousness, such as from Mayor Nagin. You had the soft bigotry of low expectations, and then you had the utterly corrupt press, who now is being held to account with lawsuits, and they hate it. They call it ridiculous. They're worried that this is gonna shut down the free press, and it's like, no, it's just gonna shut down the lies. You won't tell the truth unless you're forced to, so we're gonna force you.
Or in some cases, you're almost giving me a push to go into the TikTok controversy.
Yeah, and Okay, I saw some viral video of some young idiot saying that the first thing fascists do is shut down the free press, like Trump is shutting down TikTok. And it's like, okay, number one,
It's not Trump.
Trump isn't shutting down TikTok. It was the Biden administration that's shutting down TikTok. It's
Yes.
Congress that's shutting down TikTok. Trump.
Yes, it was the Democrat-controlled Senate that did it.
Exactly, and for Trump to get the blame, and everyone's praising this young woman with her enormous cleavage, her décolletage. They're praising her for her intellect, and it's like she's talking about fascism, and once again, fascism is a leftist ideology. It's not conservative.
No, but first of all, this is not Trump. Second of all, if it were Trump, it wouldn't bother me at all. Because some of us have been, for 4 years or 5 years now, asking why the fuck is TikTok allowed to poison the mind of our youth and collect the data of citizens in the US for the Chinese Communist Party. Period. There was a time, it's a question of ownership, not a question of freedom of speech.
Well, also, this just proves how many members of Congress the Chinese have bought off, and
that's why it took so long.
Yeah, and the new members coming in are not bought off by the Chinese, and Xi Jinping is going to be singing a different tune. Trump will do what he always does. He'll start out by saying, "We're going to invade Greenland," and did you hear the latest lie that they're telling is that Donald Trump Jr. went to Greenland and he rounded up all the homeless people and the drug addicts, and
all four of them.
Well, okay, there's that. The population of Greenland is 57,000. So, but the woman who wrote this article contacted, I think it was Don Jr.'s spokesperson, and he said, since he landed in Greenland, Donald has been under the scrutiny of cameras for every second that he's been there. So do you honestly think that he went out, just strolling and rounded up all these people and nobody filmed it? He said, your brain doesn't work. And of course it doesn't. She's writing for The Guardian. But she's going to publish this article and nobody's going to give a crap, Who cares? Who cares? It's The Guardian, so we know they lie.
It's the Labor Party, but this thing about TikTok, it's not about First Amendment issues. No entity controlled by foreigners can own a TV network in the United States.
Exactly.
For good reason. No entity with a foreigner at the head can own more than, I think it was, a handful of radio stations. You can't have a coast-to-coast network. There's a reason for that. And the same thing should apply to internet media. I don't know if you noticed that a bunch of imbeciles, because there is one thing, we may be producing less cars in the US, but the number of idiots that we are producing is going through the roof. And now they're leaving TikTok. By the way, Trump announced or suggested that he was going to ask for a 90-day extension. My guess is to give these freaking imbeciles at TikTok an opportunity to sell to a non-communist party-owned entity so that we can diffuse this by resolving the ownership issue, which would be the most intelligent thing to do. Since they are going to believe Trump like they didn't believe Biden when he says, and if you don't in 90 days, I'll close you down, and that's it. A bunch of people trying to get ahead of the closing of TikTok are jumping to another Chinese app that is actually called the Little Red Book.
Mhm.
I mean, come on, really? The Little Red Book? Don't you have one that is called the Communist Manifesto, you fucking imbeciles?
Well,
And hey, there was a crap load of idiots in the military posting images from the tarmac of a aircraft carrier, from a base, from the cockpit of an F-18, showing shit that shouldn't be shown to anybody, let alone the fucking Chinese.
mhm.
I think that all of those assholes ought to be marched in front of a court martial and sent to Leavenworth.
Well, you're talking about the quality of people who are going into the military. I just watched a sad little speech by a biological male who was wearing an Air Force uniform and had earrings and a ponytail. And this person was urging all transsexuals to continue using their pronouns, this, that, and the other. And it was pathetic. It was a farce. That sort of stuff has no place in the armed forces. And you know, if it's allowed, then you end up getting people on aircraft carriers posting TikTok videos, from the inside of their cockpits and things like that.
Yeah, not to mention on Little Red Book.
And a Little Red Book. Okay, what they're going to learn with that platform is that censorship is draconian, and they're all going to be given their social credit scores, and if they don't score high enough, they won't be allowed to post there. And
that stupid cow that you were referencing will get a mark for too much cleavage. Because they're particularly obsessed with nudity and vocab. So these people are not going to be doing well. But still, I mean, and if we are telling TikTok, get rid of your Chinese Communist Party owners, or we'll close you down, we should say the same thing to the Little Red Book, shouldn't we?
It's only a matter of time. No, the Chinese have worn out their welcome. They offer money, they offer whores. Look at Eric Swalwell. But other than that, I mean, the communist China has nothing to offer to the world. They're cheapo, crappy stuff.
Yes, sir.
I remember my father bought there's a whole new wrench set, and like the first time he used it, he snapped one of the wrenches in half. And, he like took the whole thing and he was like yelling Chinese crap, and threw it all in the garbage can, and went out and bought, scoured the countryside until he found some made in America wrenches.
Yeah, Stanley. Which back then, I don't know now, but back then they were still made in America. I had the same problem with the wrench set from China that somebody gave me. And the first time I went to work on my TR7, it cracked in the middle. It had a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
It had a fucking bubble in the middle of the handle.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you applied some torque to it, it snapped on it, and by sheer chance, I didn't hurt something badly, because could have. It's like punching an engine block. It's not going to be good for your fingers.
Well, also when you see the broken edges, it looks like it looks like iron rather than steel. Um, it's got that very rough edge that broken iron has, like a frying pan. And the whole point of steel is that you add something to iron to make the iron hard, and that's called steel.
Mhm.
So the Chinese are
Carbon.
what they call steel, but it's still iron.
Yep, that is true. But there are several things, because you can add several things to steel to make it stronger. There are obviously different qualities. Um, Chinese is shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been shit. Uh, But it's we're coming to the end of this sorry ass spectacle. About half the manufacturing of Western companies is already moved to different countries. China is not coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, their economic crisis, while disguised by the fact that the government controls every aspect of economic life, so they can print money to stop the banks from running out of bills, and nobody knows what they're doing. And unlike the US, they don't have a pure currency. So it is a time bomb. The same thing, incidentally, is happening in Russia.
Oh yeah.
Russia is forced banks to loan without restriction
Mm-hmm.
to the military industrial complex to keep them operating. Uh, and right now, that is actually pooled. The private company debt in Russia to over 20% of uh, total debt, including government debt. This is too high. And these people are not going to be able to pay the loans back.
No.
And the banks are going to go belly up.
Well, I mean, Russia is in this weird. It's entered this phase of complete madness where the country is ruled by irrationality. I saw an article, and it was by a Ukrainian soldier allegedly, and he was talking about how skilled the North Koreans are, and the North Koreans sent 12,000, and they've already lost 4,000.
Yep.
So they've lost a quarter, and they carry out infantry charges across open fields. Where's the skill? They kill their wounded. Um, the wounded
Well,
the wounded blow themselves up with hand grenades.
well, that's a skill.
I just don't
It's a certain
understand,
amount of skill
like,
to blow yourself.
why do the enemies of all that's civilized always have to be talked up by the press? Why do they always have to be pumped up?
Because our press is dominated by fucking socialists who are all victims of some form or another of Rousseau bullshit. And what they look at is the nobility of the savage. You see, since North Koreans are a primitive fucking people suffering from decades of malnutrition and parasitosis, they have to be better than us because they're more primitive, they're more ignorant, they're more stupid, and they're sick. So they have to be better. And insofar as we are the developed nations with the technology, we have to be evil. The closest to living like a savage in the middle of the forest, the more noble you are. So they look at all of these third rate parasites around the world and make them into these aspirational figures. We need to live more like them, in contact with nature and ourselves.
I started watching a new Netflix series. It's called American Primeval. And I started watching it because the lead is the woman who played the lead in that movie The Hunt, where the leftist billionaires were hunting conservatives. Her name is Betty Gilpin. And in this movie, Betty Gilpin is riding cross country with her son. I don't remember where they started. I don't know if it was even said, but they're gonna in going across. They have a covered wagon for a very short time. First, okay, they're going to face murderous Indians, murderous highwaymen, murderous Mormons, murderous American federal troops, and murderous bounty hunters. So the first episode is like one vast slaughter. So I had to find out how this thing ended. I wasn't going to invest any time if everybody dies in the end, and it has a quasi happy ending. So when I watch something, nothing is lost on me when I know how it's going to end. I don't mind that because it's the story and not the ending that I'm.
It's how it's told, yes.
And this is a new series. They're interviewing the strangely monotonic director, and they're interviewing the two leads, Betty Gilpin, who's very bright, and the male lead, who, when they ask him a question, he goes, duh, and never heard of him. But the thing that they're all talking about is the savagery that this was, and they interviewed a historian, and she said, well, they've toned it down. I mean, in this first episode, a guy gets scalped, and he doesn't get fully scalped, so he's running around with the top of his head flapping open, like a mouth, and
like scalped halfway.
Scalped halfway, yeah.
Okay.
And there was a problem. There was an encampment that the Mormons and the Paiute attacked, and it was out in the middle of nowhere. And suddenly, I guess they didn't have any sentries. Suddenly, there's arrows everywhere, and everybody's getting killed by arrows, and they're getting scalped, but it's the show is getting rave reviews, and everybody loves savages. Everybody loves primitive fucks, and I don't. I don't mind watching. I don't mind watching a show if it's going to end up somewhere. If there's going to be improvement, and the good thing about the show is that the male lead starts out as a butthole, and then he like improves. But it's the savagery that everybody's talking about. The sheer ruthless butchery without mercy. They capture all the Mormon wives, and the Paiutes are told, well, when you're done using them, just make sure to kill them because we don't want any witnesses.
Yeah.
So
what's the complaint?
Well, I mean,
that's what they did.
That's what they did, yeah. But Americans love this stuff. Americans love watching it. They love talking about it. They love, and in the press and in academia, they love the real life ones. The Russians, for example. We still have people talking up the Russians even after all this time. Any day now, the Russians are going to unleash the Russian bear, and he's going to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, now, the Russians are gearing up to attack NATO. It's like,
yeah, Please give it a try. Please give it a try. Give NATO any excuse to unleash not its full force, but just a rapid deployment force.
Yeah. No, the polls. The
And,
polls.
and they're going to be speaking English in Moscow within a month.
Well, the polls have a lot of scores to settle, and well, everybody does in that region. They all have long memories, and but I just this love of primitive savagery. The noble savage said.
Can you name one fucking socialist imbecile? I'm being redundant again. That doesn't love the savage, the primitive society, the Indians, the oppressed, the downtrodden, the colonized.
Well, they're in love with the homeless, the savage homeless who are literally running around with tomahawks.
Yeah. So, what do you know any socialist that is not obsessed by the dregs of society or humanity, for that matter? And then, they show the racism because they love the dregs of society, but don't you call them that because they're our native peoples. They are our. But they also tell you that you have to protect their way of life. That you find a tribe of funny looking little shits living in the middle of the Amazon, putting some kind of plant cone on their dicks so that they look like the big dick man, and prancing about completely naked with all kinds of parasites and
They had a lifespan of 48 years.
Dobbs. That's for the witch doctor. Most of them hardly make it past 30. And don't you take a doctor there. Don't give them penicillin if they get an infection. Don't you dare bring them to a hospital. If they get sick, go in there with a witch doctor and make your incantations to Karansiwe or whatever the fuck their deity is, and throw some kind of plant on them and smoke some mushrooms. And when he dies, you did all you could. But don't you dare introduce him to Western medicine because that is destroying their culture. What the fuck are these people? Monkeys in a cage in a zoo? So, on the one hand, you're singing the praises of the primitives. On the other hand, you're showing your contempt and bigotry.
Yeah, I mean, years ago there was a Stone Age tribe discovered, and they were all covered in ash, and they were the most isolated people ever, and it was all a fraud. It was all hoax. They were all hoax. And I don't know. It's what are they, anthropologists who go study people like that?
Yep.
Yeah, anthropologists. I've known several anthropologists, and they were all crazy. They took up the habits of primitives, and it's like, but you're slumming. You live in the 20th century, and you have a car, so getting one of those sticks through your nostrils, I mean, that doesn't prove anything except that you're ugly now.
Well, some of them do, but you see, it's the same intellectual corruption that leads them to hate technology in all of its manifestations. They don't hate oil. They hate the technology built on oil. They hate cars. They hate planes. They hate high-rising buildings. They hate everything that make that makes life more comfortable, longer, and healthier than mankind has ever known since we came down from the trees. And they hate it with passion, with medieval passion. There is no difference between the Inquisition cornering Galileo and these people burning at the stake anybody who doesn't uh, uh, communicate with the climate change religion, for instance. Don't you dare say that we're floating on oil and the earth is producing it constantly and it's not a fucking fossil, you ignorant duffus. Don't you dare say it. Don't you dare say that 3 days of fires in Pacific Palisades released into the atmosphere more carbon than you save in the last 20 years fucking your people to death. Don't say it. Because you're gonna be an unwilling participant in an auto da fe.
Well, and we're talking about rebuilding. The rest of the country, the sane part of the country, is going to rebuild. What they're going to do in California is Gavin Newsom is going to declare all these burned areas to be special areas worthy of protection, and he's going to apply a completely onerous permitting program that's going to make it impossible to rebuild. As of yet, it's impossible to haul away the rubble and the garbage from all the burned houses because you need an endless stack of permits for each individual. You need a permit for the wood. You need a permit for the roasted metal. You need a permit for the glass. So all of that, I mean, just carting away the destroyed homes is going to take at least a year, if not more. And then they're going to, like they've done in Hawaii. There's been no rebuilding in Hawaii after the wildfires that burned down all the beachfront houses because the state has determined that all these areas, they need special rebuilding laws, and so it's impossible to rebuild in Hawaii. They're trying to force everybody to sell their property so that the state can then sell it to their buddies and they can put up high rises.
Yeah. And they're threatening fire and damnation to anybody who sells their lot to a private investor.
Yep.
Because you see, private investors are vultures.
Mm-hmm.
Vultures, my ass. Your husband down. The only thing you have is this thing. You're looking down 5 years of permits and ass pain, and somebody comes in and says, "I'll give you $2 million for the lot,"
Mm-hmm.
and you keep the insurance money to rebuild elsewhere. I'll take the money and run.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to make that illegal because apparently the free transaction between two willing citizens of this golden plane is too much to take for the fascist government of California.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid you actually had some trade freedom. And they're talking as if that was bad for humanity, and it isn't.
What happened was that the voters were more than happy to vote for things that would impact other people, and then now that the crime and the craziness and the fires are impacting everybody, they're unhappy, and let's hope that they're smart enough to not keep voting for the same people who are making all this really insane stuff happen.
I happen to think that, unfortunately, the amount of people that were fucked royally in Pacific Palisades, in Santa Monica, are not enough to move the needle. Yes, they're mostly upper middle class to upper class folk. But what was it, 36,000 of them?
Well, that's just in one place. I mean, how many fires?
Yeah, in total, how many people in total were affected directly by the fires, like losing your house?
No idea
A
yet.
100,000?
Yeah, no idea yet.
Okay, when we know, my guess is it's not going to be enough to move the needle in a statewide, and people. The only way that people let the teeth of socialism go, the only time they delatch is when the whole thing collapses on their ass. People who think they are receiving something for free are not inclined to say no. Oh, but if we elect somebody else, we're not going to have uh, free healthcare. We're not going to have extra money in retirement. God knows what's going to happen to the promised 50% raise in our pensions. We're not going to have free this. We're going to have free that, and they don't. They don't think beyond that. That's why socialist entities have never voluntarily left the scene. They have to lose a war or collapse their economies to the ground. And when people are eating their dog's shit, then they think about change. And sometimes not even.
No, I mean, California. My guess is California is going to be like Russia, where the Russians are basically going to take any amount of punishment meted out by their grandfather, and California will be the same way.
Yeah.
If you have these idiots broadcasting on social media clips that show Adam Schiff being made into a complete
A retard.
catastrophe, and they think that's somehow benefiting their party. These are people who are going to vote Democrat no matter what. And they would, or Bernie Sanders, for God's sake.
No, he makes so much money with socialism. Why should he change? Because the people who are on the top side of socialism, I loved the clowning chief talking about the oligarchy. I'm talking about the oligarchy. Give me a fucking break. They depend on the oligarchy. They are the oligarchy. The top of the nomenclature, the members of the Soviet, the members of the Politburo, they are the oligarchs in socialism. Biden is not an oligarch, but the servant of the oligarchy. He was the guy who benefited more than anybody else from the tech oligarchs, from Jeff Bezos, from that fucking imbecile Zuckerberg, who is now so busy trying to lick Trump's asshole, he's gonna herniate his tongue. Because all of a sudden he saw the light. I don't believe in after the fact conversions. I never did. He's just an opportunistic little prick. It's okay, as long as he doesn't give another $500 million to steal Wisconsin, we're fine. But the guy who was on the receiving end of Soros, Gates, Zuckerberg, Bezos is the one warning us about oligarchs? You gotta be shitting me.
Well, see, the problem with the American political system is that it relies on our politicians to be honest people, and the politicians have the ability to write laws and sick federal agencies on people in order to control their behavior, which is what Zuckerberg claims they did to him. They called him up screaming and said, you have to censor this stuff. And he said, but it's true. And they said, that doesn't matter. You have to censor it. And the mainstream press, they went through a tantrum. They had a tantrum about freedom of speech being endangered by freedom of speech. And it got to this point where it was just completely insane. And I think even they realized it, so they gave up talking about it. And now they're going back to just making shit up. But it's all retarded stuff, like Donald Trump Jr. recruiting homeless people. I just looked it up while you were talking. There's about 200 homeless people in Greenland, So
yeah. I exaggerated. I said, what, all four of them?
Yeah.
And I guarantee you those 200 are living in shelters, not on the streets.
Well, of course.
Among other things, because this is Greenland. They wouldn't last 24 fucking hours on the streets.
Yeah. No. But see, these are the same people that told us that Trump went to Russia in order to hire prostitutes to urinate on each other.
Yeah.
And at the same time, knew that Trump was a notorious germaphobe.
Yeah, no, these are the same people telling you that Trump is going to have an indoors inauguration because he fears controversy over the size of the crowd.
Well, they were going to...
Really, come on. It's of all the possible scenarios, that is the one you're picking to die on.
Also, it doesn't matter what the size of the crowd is. The press will always report that nobody was there. They always...
Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Now, there are the other side that claims with more believability that there are some risks. I don't buy this thing because the level of security in DC this weekend is something I haven't seen in this country ever. There are miles, hundreds of miles of fence. There are anything from cops, not only from DC, but from several states. There's the National Guard. Over 5,000 were deployed yesterday. To get to the mall area, you have to go through 5 checkpoints. It is more difficult to get into the mall in Washington than usually is to get into the White House. So I think the security level is high. Some have noted that Trump's caravan showed signs of possible anti-drone jammers on the roof of the cars. Well, it's entirely possible. I'm not saying they are or they aren't. If they are, I can understand why, because obviously you don't want to leave the top unguarded. But I do believe it is a very safe environment. I also believe that with a weather forecast of 10 degrees Fahrenheit, with sustained winds at 20 miles per hour and drafts up to 40, and a wind shear of minus fucking 5, can you imagine people standing in that weather for 6 hours outside?
Well, Trump wouldn't want it. He wouldn't want, even if people were willing to do it, he wouldn't feel right.
He wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want it. You wouldn't want it. If somebody was stupid enough to want it, chances are they'd end up with some kind of heart attack. Because it is one thing to go to work, as I did so many years, with that kind of weather, or go to the supermarket when I was living in In New Hampshire, it wasn't uncommon to have a temperature of -9, -12, -18 on occasion, with wind shear going into the -20s. And we'd still got out, but we got out, to the car and back, to do something 10 minutes and back, not to stand immobile for 6 hours. What kind of cretinism is this?
Well, I was in weather that cold twice. Once was in Chicago, and once was in New Hampshire. Yeah, it had to be New Hampshire. And
Oh,
it was
God.
so cold.
My place was at the
High-
foot of Washington.
Okay. It was so cold that I felt like I wasn't wearing any clothes. That I could feel the cold on my skin all over my body. And I was wearing sweaters, long underwear, scarves, knitted hat, everything. But when the wind blew, it felt like I was standing out there naked, and it was a nightmare.
The wind would blow, and my eyes would tear up, and the tears would freeze on my cheeks, and I would have red curvy burns on my cheeks as a consequence of the frozen tears. Give me a fucking break. And you want anybody to go stand at the mall in Washington? There is nothing to break the wind for you. If it blows from the northwest, it's gonna come from Canada into your ass. There are no buildings, no wind barriers. It comes right over Arlington Cemetery, down the canyon of the mall, and it hits you with full force. The wind shear has to be insufferable there. Of course, Trump made the right decision. Of course, he made the right decision. Of course, he doesn't want people to risk serious medical conditions by standing in fucking Antarctica out there. And anybody who criticizes him for that, oh, the cowardly little mouse doesn't want people to compare the size of crowds. Oh, he is afraid that there might be an attempt on his life. All of that is bullshit.
Well, are you telling me that the average person making an accusation isn't afraid of an attempt on their life? Trump was shot in the head. He's already proved that of all the things you could call him, coward is not one of them.
Is not one of them. But by the way, that's the people on the Trump camp that are saying that.
Oh, sure.
Because they are, I'm afraid, many of them, not more intelligent than your average pussy hat. By the way, they're back in Washington, the pussy hats, right on cue.
Yeah, but this time around, there's only like 15 of them.
Well, a little bit more, but comparatively speaking, yes. Just a few hundred pretending to be thousands. Walking around with those little pink stupid hats. I hope they spend the entire inauguration protesting in the streets. The weather may dispose of half of them.
Well, I mean, the older I get, the more impatient I get with people. And like, okay, there's some of us who faced human-caused danger, which is just about the scariest danger when you're up against someone who's, say, trying to murder you, that sort of thing, or trying to kill you in a war. And you see people, they're 50 pounds overweight. They're throwing around the word coward. They've never seen the elephant on any level. And On the other hand, you have a president who was shot in the head, and his first instinct was to bounce up to on his feet again, and he had to argue with his Secret Service detail, who was telling him, "You can't do that." And he's like, "Of course I am.
He did it again.
And I'm going to do it with my shoes on. So get my shoes."
Something for those idiots. Trump is not at risk of an assassination attempt during the inauguration. He's at risk every second of his life. The inauguration is one of the most guarded environments, one of the most controlled environments you can have. This is not just left to a Secret Service team picked by Jill Biden. Trump has the best and the brightest in the country controlling this event. 3 days from now, he's going to go to take a flight to go visit, I don't know, Mohammed bin Salman or Bibi Netanyahu. And he's going to be an exponentially greater risk. This is a man who, for one Thanksgiving, without letting anybody know, while the press was complaining that he hadn't saluted the forces in Afghanistan for Thanksgiving, he suddenly showed up over there.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Those are not the acts of cowards, you idiot. Coward is the ink shitter who sings in a cubicle of the redaction of the Washington Compost and bloviates about Trump being a coward because he doesn't want people to freeze to death. Simple as that.
I saw something about a documentary about a CNN camera woman. I can't remember her name now.
The CNN
camera woman. She was the first female photojournalist, video journalist, camera. And she was a punk rocker. And she covered war because war was, she tried everything else: sex, drugs, booze, parachuting. War was the ultimate thrill. And eventually she had the lower part of her face shot off. And they managed to reattach her jaw, but she had a lot of trouble speaking after that. And this documentary just hails her as hails her courage and everything. But in her own words, she was simply addicted to it. It wasn't courage as much as an addiction. She had to be, she had to play chicken with it. And eventually, her luck ran out and she ended up with half a face. And I don't know, it's someone like Trump. Trump he doesn't want to play chicken with anything. He wants to build. He wants to rebuild now. And I knew a quadriplegic guy, and he told me that this was 25 years ago. He told me that there were more young quadriplegics than ever before because of extreme sports. And a large percentage of people who went into the armed forces, specifically the Army, to be infantrymen during the Iraq War, were extreme sports enthusiasts because they'd heard that getting blown up by an IED was the ultimate rush. And CNN again interviewed some young machine gunner and she'd been blown up, I think, 8 or 9 times, and she said there was nothing like it. She volunteered for all the most dangerous missions because there was nothing like getting blown up by an IED.
Adrenaline.
Exactly. And one could argue that this isn't courage because it's a person looking for a drug, basically, the adrenaline rush.
Yes, it is.
And courage is when you're deathly afraid, but you do it anyway. If somebody doesn't feel fear,
There's no courage.
there's no courage. It's if you feel fear, but you go out there and face the danger anyway. People, men in this country are trained or told that they shouldn't feel fear, but if you don't feel fear, there's something wrong with you.
There's something. You're sick. You're sick. You're either a psychopath or a nut. Either way, I don't want you next to me.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. Courage, heroism, is the overcoming of fear.
Yeah.
Those who face the worst fear overcome it and do what they need to do because they owe it to their country, their mama, or their brethren. Take your pick. I don't care. Most people in combat will tell you that they are doing it to save the guy next to them.
Mm-hmm.
Not the country, not the flag, their brethren. It's okay. It works. That's why esprit de corps is so important. I never trusted and never will somebody who is fearless because they are nuts. If you don't feel fear when bullets are flying around your head, you're nuts. And you're not an asset.
In World War I, there was a British officer who was a cartoonist. His name was Bruce Bairnsfather, and he was a combat officer, and he published weekly cartoons in various British newspapers. And a lot of his cartoons were about fear. And okay, the British were first issued the steel helmet in 1915. It's one of his cartoons. It shows a man marching with his steel helmet, and the helmet is the size of an umbrella, and it says what it feels like when you're just marching in it. And then it shows a man in combat, and it says what it feels like when you're in combat, and it's just this little tiny, this little doll helmet on top of his head. And whenever he drew combat, the soldiers always, their hair was standing on end. And he survived the war, I think. He survived the war, but he laughed at it. But when you look at the cartoons, you understand that, in a lot of ways, there's nothing to laugh about because it's so horrific.
Right.
But
sometimes you have to.
Well, the reason I didn't go into the armed forces, I thought about being a cop, but the reason I didn't was because at the time I was a physical coward. I was so afraid of. I knew that I wouldn't make a good cop because I would freeze or run or whatever. And the same with the armed forces. And when I finally had to face that sort of thing, I did run. I wouldn't run now, but I'm 62 and nobody's going to hire.
It makes it difficult.
Yeah, exactly. But the problem that we have now, especially in California, it used to be said that if you pulled your gun, then everybody went, whoa, no, and they ran away. They don't do that anymore. They go, shoot me, bitch, shoot me, bitch, shoot me, bitch, shoot me, bitch. It's a challenge.
Okay, I'm up to that challenge. Are you?
Well, in California, they better have a weapon, and they better have said, I'm going to take this tomahawk and I'm going to bury it in your head, and you better have felt threatened before you can use your pistol.
Good. I'll drop a fucking tomahawk on their hands.
California is sort of the anti-state.
Like a cop once told me in Miami, if you're in this situation, make sure it's not one shot. The dead make terrible witnesses.
Well, I mean, the cops investigate every use of force as if it were, an attempt on the governor's life. Homeless people. Okay, I saw Grady Judd in Florida talking about a Venezuelan gang that they arrested, and they had this. They were home invaders and burglars, and what they did was they would target almost exclusively Asian people. They would go inside the place of business and they would photograph the target. They would follow them. They would get to know their schedule down to the last second. And then, when the time was right, they would hit the house. And, these people had been arrested and released like 9 times. And I guess DeSantis is starting, if Trump gives the states the right to deport people themselves, then DeSantis is going to be the first one in line. And I think Trump is going to do things that people don't even expect. He's described a lot of what he do, but I think he's going to do a lot more. And
I'm hoping for it too. For instance, T80. By the way, hello T80. How are you? We have a lot of friends that I hadn't seen in a while. Joanne, Donita. They've been busy. I do have a question. What is your take on the Palestinian sympathizer working in the U.S. Naval Laboratory who has vowed to resist the dictatorship of the second Trump administration? I'll give you my opinion, then you can talk for however long. Number one, I would hold his ass to the brig faster than this little shit can say, oh, fuck. Because this resisted dictatorship is already insubordination on steroids. Second, if a little shit was not born in the United States and is a naturalized citizen, I would strip him of his citizenship and ship him to his country of birth. We have no need for this kind of fuckery, and we shouldn't tolerate anybody who supports terrorism in our midst. Now, Thomas, what do you think of that asshole?
Well, this isn't going to fly under Pete Hegseth, and it's whatever happens to this guy is going to happen fast and hard. And, we'll just see how many of these people will. Okay, Lara, is it pronounced Lara or Laura Trump? It's spelled Lara.
No, this one is Lara Trump.
Yeah, okay, so Lara Trump. Lara was warning the resistance, don't do it, because this time around it's not going to be the same. And if you're in the armed forces and you're announcing this shit, my guess is you're going to be relieved of your position instantly and hauled off in, like you said, in handcuffs. And it has to be done because we're not kidding around here.
No, without hesitation. and as soon as possible.
It is so childish. It's so childish.
And then I would look to whoever the fuck signed off on the background check for this shit and put him in the cell next door. Because obviously they weren't doing their job.
A lot of people need to be fired, and the people who hired them need to be fired. Like, a lot of examples have to be made.
All of these people were supposed to pass a background check. All of these people were supposed to be investigated to make sure that we don't let into the army, that we don't train to the use of our best weapons. Criminals, enemy agents, retards. And if the investigative branch is not doing its work, and you get people like, Camilo Ernesto Mejia, the son of two ministers of the Sandinista government, named after Che Guevara and Camilo Cienfuegos, who became the first deserter in the Iraq war. What the fuck was he doing in the army? Who signed off on him? Who signed off on a guy who says, I'm going to resist the dictatorship?
Well, I had two nephews who served in the military, and this was during the Obama years. And let me tell you, I've never seen anything like it. The hand-holding was unbelievable. They've instituted something called battle buddies, and a battle buddy is somebody who, the two of you work together to get through basic training and then advanced individual training. And if you're assigned two battle buddies, that says a lot about, you've got issues. And just the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, 10th, 20th, 100th chances given people, like nobody washes out. You wash out only if you say, commit murder or something like that. Then you get washed out. Or if you're a psychotic who's hallucinating, then you'll wash out. But other than that, it's really quite amazing. The only the silver lining is that despite all the troubles that our armed forces have, we're still the best in the world compared to everybody else.
Yeah. Well, yes, but then again, what are we comparing ourselves to?
Well, okay, we couldn't fight.
There might be small individual units someplace that are better, but overall, what are we comparing ourselves to? The Chinese army, the North Korean army, the Russian army? Those are fucking jokes.
We couldn't fight the war that the Israelis are fighting.
No.
Number one, we would not be taking out the terrorist targets because we would be terrified. We would have members of the Judge Advocate General Corps having to okay every single bomb drop, that sort of thing. And okay, we do have. What gets me is they used to call. Okay, we have what are called Tier 1 special operators. It's like the Delta Force and the Team 6.
The SEALs.
Those guys used to keep their mouths shut, and now they all have YouTube channels. And
the only thing missing is them streaming into TikTok as it's going on. It's the one thing I haven't seen yet.
Well, I have to say, I'm not impressed by the one. Okay, a Navy SEAL told me years ago that the people you see blathering are not the people you want to hear from, and the people you want to hear from aren't going to talk
I'm
to
not blathering.
you. Yeah, the people I see on YouTube, I'm not impressed. And okay, they say, this former Delta Force operator. I don't get the impression that this is the sort of person that say Trump would send into enemy territory to take out al-Baghdadi or something. I mean, the when the SEALs killed Bin Laden, at least 2 or 3 of them claimed to be the one who fired the shots.
Yep.
And it's like, 2 of you are lying. I don't know.
Yep. And 2 of them are still lying.
Yeah, and I just don't understand. If you're a Delta Force operator, you're at the apex. You don't have anything to prove to anybody, and you see like some of these guys getting into these spats with like everyday people, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, you were a Delta Force operator. Why are you arguing with this barista? What's going on? I don't know. That's just the way I look at it.
Why do you have such a low self-esteem? Kind of like contradicts what they did, doesn't it?
Well, this is the thing, that if I had been a Delta Force operator and I put in my 20 years, I'd be able to take whatever crap thrown at me on social. For one thing, I wouldn't be on social media talking about my career. But for another thing, I just wouldn't be.
You mean you wouldn't be like O'Neill?
Like what?
O'Neill.
Which O'Neill?
The guy who shot Bin Laden. He's made it a career of being in social media.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Social media, is a great invention. It allows you to communicate with people all over the world. But on the other hand, there's people out there who there's some Navy SEAL. His name is Jocko, and he's like a human bulldog, and he's just like ruff, 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 ruff. And I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing. My family has a lot of combat veterans in it, and you'd never know. Like, and real like one of them was a helicopter pilot in this special forces experimental gunship unit that was testing out gunships in combat. I had no idea he did that until he died. After he died, then it all came out. But just talking to him, he was just a dude.
Everybody I know, family or not, but my good friend Sam, he died a few years ago. He was a gunner in a B-29 in World War II, tail gun. And he survived a horrific shooting down of his B-29 over Yugoslavia. He was the only one to survive from that crew. He never spoke about it. He never said anything about it. He never wanted to talk about it. I had to wait until he died to go to the Air Force and find his history for his funeral. And then I realized what he had done, and I couldn't believe it. I had Rambo next to me all those years. and he wouldn't let you know it.
Hmm.
My cousin Jim, he had 5 tours in Vietnam, a pilot in the Maine National Guard, and he used to fly for what we now know as Air America. Uh, Back then, they had different names for that. He never spoke to anybody about it except on occasion when a bunch of the buddies got together in his house and started, drinking, singing, and uh, 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 remembering and telling each other anecdotes. And that way, I knew a few things, but he wouldn't tell you. People who met and worked with or for him for 40 years never knew. He was a pilot. He was a pilot for Braniff. He was a pilot for Varick. He was a pilot for a director of operations for Arrow and Aeroposta. He, but he would never tell you what he did in Vietnam. And what he did in Vietnam was fucking crazy. It's the kind of shit that nobody in their sane mind would do with a plane. He's a guy he's one of the guys who was flying to Lagos when we were not in Lagos.
Hmm.
Uh, they wouldn't talk. Some of those missions were still classified until the 90s. I know missions were classified until the 90s. He died in 2014. He never spoke about it. He never bragged about it. He never told people I was a pilot in Vietnam. Nothing, because they don't have to. And in most cases, I would say the remembrance is associated with pain as well, because you can't talk about it without remembering the friend you left, the guy whose head was blown off 2 inches from yours. Who the fuck wants to talk about it?
Well, one of the things I like about Trump is that he keeps most of his personal life to himself. And the stuff that's gotten out, like relatively recently, there was a video of Barron when he was 5 years old. And what was remarkable is that he spoke English with a thick Slovenian accent. And, you know, that's proof that he was, that Melania is a hands-on mother, that he learned to speak English with a Slovenian accent because he wasn't raised by a nanny. And
Yep.
we get glimpses of the Trump personal lives, but we don't really need to know. This is why, I mean, if I got an invitation to the White House or Mar-a-Lago, I'd go, but I don't have the need to meet Trump and shake his hand because, he's doing a good job and I admire him a lot, but I don't have to get personal with him. And the problem that the Democrats have is that they take everything personally, and they make it into a personal thing. That ridiculous Air Force man woman with his earrings and his ponytail going on and on and on about how, keep using your pronouns and that sort of thing. And it's just foolish. Like that whole era is over. It's done. It's gone. And what's amazing is how quickly a lot of this stuff is changing. I still see people writing about The View. Oh, the View said this, the View said that. Doesn't matter.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I really don't give a crap.
No.
What? You mean that Whoopi Goldberg can talk? I thought by now she would have lost that ability.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Joy Behar,
they pulled out all the stops before the election,
yeah,
made complete fools out of themselves.
yeah. Who watches them anyway?
I don't know. The good news is about everything is that the Democrats are showing that they haven't learned anything, and they're going to keep on keeping on doing all the stuff that cost them the election. And
yeah, I hope they do. I hope they double up. I hope they come to the inescapable conclusion that the reason they lost is they didn't go left enough, and that the next candidate for president is Schiff and AOC. Please,
yeah,
send me your worst libtard. And by the way, guys in the chat are calling the View the spew, the pew. Apparently, they all love them. We're going to have a little bit of this show, and I have a feeling it's not going to be like the first term. Yassin Alcindor is going back to the White House this time with ABC after keeping her parked in NPR with a salary during the lean years. She's now going back to try and create a little bit of controversy. I have a feeling that the press secretary is going to plow overhead with heavy machinery. I don't think they're going to tolerate the circus that they did last time around.
No. Okay, let's see. Who's have they determined who the press secretary is going to be?
Nobody has been paying attention to that. It's going to be a wonderful woman who's been press secretary for the campaign, just had a baby, gorgeous, beautiful woman, but also sharp as a tack. She's going to nail them to the wall on day one.
Well, I know that Tammy Bruce is going to be the State Department spokesperson, and Tammy Bruce is an astonishing person. She started out as a leftist. She's a lesbian, and she's become about as conservative as you could be. But she's extremely brilliant. She's an autodidact, so she fits in with Trump's disruptors. She doesn't have any pedigree. She basically went from being the vice president of Los Angeles Now to being a radio talk show host, and now she's going to be spokesperson for the State Department. And they always say that you can't. Anyone who tries to reform the State Department gets stymied or goes native. I don't see Bruce going native.
No, but I think that the State Department has to be dismantled to the ground and rebuilt. I think that not even the janitors should remain in the building. I think that all of these collection of handpicked Marxists by Obama, added to the veterans of the Peace Corps and the leftovers from Clinton, they all have to leave. They do not understand, they never did, that they serve at the will and pleasure of the president, that they are not supposed to have a mind of their own. People who work in the Foreign Service should not have a mind of their own. They represent at any and all times the opinion, the policies, and the directives of a president and nobody else. Whether they are an ambassador, a political officer, a public relations officer, or a fucking visa clerk. They're not supposed to think for themselves. They are supposed to the best of their ability, carry on the policy set by the president. And anything to the contrary is a betrayal of their position. All of these assholes in the State Department today think they are better than the president.
Oh yeah.
They think that, it doesn't matter what Trump says because we know better and we're going to do it better. And to make matters worse, they're all corrupt. They all have a grotesque amount of money to spend on their own pet projects around the world, on their own recognizance without ever having to explain it. It has to end. I don't believe that 90% of the employees at any level of the State Department are up to the task. I simply don't.
Well, they should not be given any hands-on authority. There was a talk show host who was in Iraq. He was a National Guardsman, and the military would give these guys cash, and they would basically buy the goodwill of the Iraqis. Some guy would come to them and say, one of my sheep miscarried during this latest bombing. They'd say, "Oh, how much do you want?" And he'd, and the State Department stepped in and stopped that. That was not to be done. And it's like, okay, why does the State Department have authority over what the U.S. Army is doing in Iraq? That should not be allowed.
No, one of the things that I complained in Gander is that the U.S. Army troops in the multinational force of observers in Sinai were under the command of the State Department. You should never, never, ever, ever put the lives of our soldiers in the hands of a little shit from the Ivy League who actually has contempt for the military. Never. We should never again put troops under the command or supervision of the State Department. And I think that Hegseth is the right man for this. If I'm later disappointed, so be it. But I think he's the right man for this, to bring lethality back. There should be no other reason to put a soldier halfway across the world except to kill the enemy. Nobody should be a soldier subject to being sent across the world to kill the enemy that is not willing to fucking kill the enemy. That's what armies are for. They're not for humanitarian purposes. They're not for charity work. They're not to ring bells on Christmas to raise money for the Salvation Army. And until we learn that, we're going to have problems. And the State Department thinks that's what they're good for.
Well, the State Department doesn't want.
I'll be right back.
The State Department doesn't want. Right. The State Department doesn't want the use of the armed forces under any circumstances anywhere. And this goes back to the very beginning when we had literal Soviet agents serving in the State Department. And, when you have people working in an entire department, when the entire department is all about subverting the president and bringing the U.S. down a notch or two, you have to get rid of it. You have to. I watch a lot of true crime programs, and they talk about having to. There was some murder committed in some little tiny town in Kentucky, and they didn't have any of they didn't have the ability to do the forensic work needed, and the state, I don't know if it was Kentucky, the state didn't have its own Bureau of Investigation. Like the Georgia Bureau of Investigation is basically the state version of the FBI. And so they called in the FBI, and they were just talking about the capabilities of the FBI. I think that's perfectly fine. Let the FBI send in people who will spray luminol and detect footprints and blood splatter and all of that. Just don't let the FBI, investigate and arrest people, because obviously they've abused that power, as we've seen with the Trump administration, when they sent essentially a SWAT team to go arrest Roger Stone, and he's standing on the other side of his gate going, "What are you guys doing?" And they're pointing their rifles at him. Roger Stone.
Well, no, it's. I don't think it's a secret that I never liked Roger Stone, and I still don't. But what, he posed a danger to these assholes? We're talking about a sexagenarian more, going, "What's wrong, guys?" All they had to do was giving a date and a time to show up before a judge, or to show up at FBI headquarters, and he would have. And if he doesn't, then send the troops. But there was no need to treat an unarmed civilian with no history of violence. His only crime is to have a big mouth. Big fucking deal. I'm toast then.
Well, it was an operation meant, it was, okay, the FBI called CNN, and CNN arrived before the raid was carried out. So
yes,
the FBI wanted to send a message of intimidation. And
yes,
unfortunately for them, it backfired, because I started seeing all these videos of any kind of FBI, ATF coming to people's doors, and they would just say, "Fuck off," and slam the doors. And, I never used to have that attitude, but now, if I were called to talk to the FBI, I would say, talk to my lawyer. And it's too bad, but that's just the way it is.
That's the way it is. No. And my advice to everybody out there, and not just the FBI, because at this point, I've seen in the past 6 years so much abuse of power with so many people that if anybody ever wants to talk to you, you clam up, like the Archbishop of New York when the IRS wanted to investigate him. You clam up and you say nothing without a lawyer, except, "I'd like to have my lawyer present." And that's it. Don't try to help. Don't try to be nice, because anything you say, they will shove it up your ass, whether it can be used against you or not.
Well, in the case of Mike Flynn, they told him, "Oh, you don't need a lawyer. This is going to be really casual."
Yeah.
And then they used what he said against him. So,
and the things he didn't say.
True.
Because they made up a lot of shit. So, no, it's... oh, Brenda Jean, poor darling. Why do you use the S word? First time I realized I'm a sexagenarian. So am I, dear, and so is this guy. So there is no offense between us sexagenarians. There's a lot of our chickens around here. Don't you know 60 is the new 40?
Yeah, it is. I mean, my parents had, my mother had a subscription to American Heritage or something like that. And
I remember the magazine. I used to have a subscription in the 80s.
Yeah, these were all at hardback, and I was flipping through one, and it was birthday cards from the turn of the century, and it was like happy 40th birthday, and it showed basically an elderly woman, and this was like a woman turning 40 around the turn of the century was like, that was it. Your life was over.
When I turned 40, some asshole gave me a cane with a horn and a bag of pills.
Yeah, I mean,
I still don't need them.
Well, it's okay. You look at mostly okay. I just realized one of my favorite movies is called The Girl on the Train, and it's about a woman with a drinking problem who may or may not have witnessed a murder in a house as her train passed by it on the way to work. And I realized that all the leads are British. They're all British, and they're all playing Americans. And one of them, she's been acting for 15, 20 years now, and like she's got to be pushing 40 by now, but you never know. She looks like she's in her late 20s, and she hasn't had any work done. The one thing you could say about Europeans is that they do old age really well. Italians, like Italian men, they tend to age really well. Italian women too, but the Brits.
I've seen some septuagenarian Italian women that you have to go haba haba. In Spain, it's not that advanced. People in Spain, when they see me, they think I am in my 50s, because 60-some-year-olds there are fucking old.
Mm-hmm.
Like very old. And in the 70s, they're fucking ancient. In Italy, damn, women age well. Men up until the 80s look fit and trim.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that too many Americans. I saw some. It was a compilation of like funny cats, and it showed this woman watching TV, and she had what looked like a fish bowl. It was full of chicken nuggets, and she was just like, that was her snack as she was watching TV.
Yeah.
Chicken nuggets. So she was like pounding down like 2,000 calories as a sort of absent-minded snack. I mean, you can't do that, especially when you're a person of a certain age.
It's a good thing you didn't catch me today with the waffles.
The waffles?
Waffles with caramel. I had more calories in my snack today than a kid in Congo has in 3 months. But then again, the kid in Congo is sick as shit, and I'm not. Maybe the reason we stay so young in the US is chemtrails.
Chemtrails, yeah.
Yeah, but don't worry, because RFK Jr. said he's gonna clear them up.
Well, and this is, I mean, that'd be the easiest thing in the world. He says, see, everything you're seeing now is just vapor trails. There's no more chemicals, and everyone will go, yay.
Yay, he did it. He did it. God, this.
Yeah, when I was on Twitter, some woman was raving about chemtrails, and I showed her this picture. I said, you mean like this? She goes, yeah, oh my God, those are excellent. And then I showed her, I had cropped the picture, and I showed her the full picture, which is taken in 1944. It was from B-17s. And she called me an asshole and then blocked me.
I think the first time I asked I asked my father about that. Must have been like 6, 7 years old, and there was this plane leaving a trail. And my father explained to me, as only a doctor in chemistry can, how from the plane's exhaust, water crystallized and formed these clouds that stayed for a little longer in the air and all that jazz. And the first time that I heard some kind of conspiracy bullshit about the chemical contents, and by the way, knowing how aircraft turbines operate, when I see the B-29s flying at God knows what altitude, cold as shit, uh, who can be so stupid as to suggest it's anything other than vapor?
Well, also you're flying that high and you're presumably spraying chemicals. Whatever you're spraying isn't going to land over what you're flying over. It's going
It's
to
gonna,
push by the winds like 2,000 miles away.
yeah,
More
and
likely than not, it's going to end up over the ocean.
you're doing this in the mid-Atlantic region at 45,000 feet. Wait till the jet stream catches that shit. It's gonna spray London.
Yeah.
But people don't think about these things. Anyway, that was enough of a detour. I didn't want to spend time with it. I thought it was just funny to mention it in passing. When I lived in California, says Deb, planes would fly over spraying malathion. Lovely. Well, uh, I remember when planes were spreading DDT when I was a kid to keep the mosquitoes at bay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I never heard of anybody having any complications derived from that DDT. But when they stopped doing that to protect our health, malaria had made a comeback in the area, and typhus, and and Zika, and all of a sudden those fucking mosquitoes were spreading disease more than a Democrat. Um, I never understood that.
Well, the illegals have brought back almost everything that we thought we'd eradicated. They even found a woman in Los Angeles who had rabies. So
Yes,
a rabid illegal alien.
she was a Democrat. She was a Democrat.
That's just wonderful. But
A lesbian with rabies has to be a Democrat.
this is what people vote for, and you know, um, I think they still don't think Trump's serious. You keep hearing people saying it's logistically impossible to deport 1 million people, and it's like,
Watch it, baby.
yeah, they
And
did.
you're gonna start watching it on actually Monday evening.
Yeah,
Um, a lot of people, and down here in South Florida, where as you know, there are no illegals.
yeah.
There are no illegals. If there is an illegal, he must come from Denmark, because there are no Latino illegals in about half the fucking population. But you should see how some of them are drifting into a panic. And they ask me sometimes, you you really think they're gonna come after all the illegals? I said, well, let me put it this way: you have time, unless you committed a crime. If you have a record for shoplifting, if you were arrested participating in gang crime activities, you're going to be number one on the list out of here. It's going to take a while for all the fucking criminals to make it home. My impression, and I don't know if this is yours, is that people who have never been a nuisance, whose only crime is overstaying a visa or not showing up at an asylum hearing, but who have otherwise worked productively, do not live off of the state, pay their taxes, and are good citizens, I have a feeling that Trump is going to find a solution for them.
Yeah, I mean, our side isn't doing itself any favors by raving about H-1B visas, but the reality is that we have H-1B visas because we have positions that we can't otherwise fill. That's just reality. And
yeah, but it's not our side. It's fucking Bannon. Bannon was never on our side.
Say it again.
It's not our side ranting about H-1B visas. It's Bannon. And Bannon has never been on our side.
Okay, I don't want to keep saying nominally before of everything.
No, I know, but I'm not saying it to you. I know you know this, but anybody who's hearing, it's a very focalized problem. Trump is already spoken clearly on the subject. It's Bannon and his minions who raised the issue of the H-1B, and I agree with you. We have H-1B visas because, God, if people only knew, what a dreadful job it is to be a programmer, with hours and hours and hours in front of a computer, checking code to make sure there are no typos and things. It's one of the most boring jobs in the planet. People think that when software companies want to hire programmers from Bangalore to come to the US, they're getting the job from an American. No, they're not. And the job they're getting is not glamorous. It's a piece of shit nobody wants. And this all started when all the big tech companies in the 90s started opening their software developing divisions outside of the US. In India, in particular, that's how Bangalore came to be a center for tech. In Brazil. And politicians came to Silicon Valley. Why are you opening this? Because we don't have people in the US. If you want us to do this in the US, you have to give us more H-1 visas so that we can bring the programmers here. Otherwise, we're going to bring the programming there. And to this day, there are people who pretend not to understand this.
Well,
yeah,
it's just basic xenophobia. And, I don't care in the slightest about what a person's cultural or ethnic background is, as long as they're I mean, with the H-1B visas, there's no real path to citizenship with that. And there's basically no real reason to not do it. But, people like Bannon are appealing to xenophobia, and, you have to understand that I mean, xenophobia is stupid. It's self-defeating. Holders of H-1B visas have absolutely nothing in common with illegal Venezuelans pouring over the border
No. And by the way, the same idiot said that we have to suspend all immigration for a year. For what the fuck are you talking about?
Why? I mean, what does legal immigration have to do with illegal immigration?
Right. No, they're throwing in everything together because in the end you are right. They're nothing but chauvinistic little pricks. Now, funny that the guy who's a chauvinistic little prick is a drunken fucking grandson of an Irish immigrant. How does that work?
Well, the whole
I
freaking
would tell the better to self fucking deport.
the whole fucking country is nothing but descendants of immigrants, including Native Americans. They all came from Siberia.
Well, came from someplace else. Everybody in this country came from someplace else. That's not even an issue. The question is, do we control immigration? Do we vet those who come into this country? Do we allow ISIS to move from Baghdad to Philadelphia? Do we allow Tren de Aragua to move from Caracas and Puerto Cabello to Phoenix? Of course not. We have to have a control. We have to control the border, period, in a freaking story. And I wouldn't even mind open borders if we didn't have a welfare state. And let's go back to the Wild West. Arm yourself, defend yourself against the Tren de Aragua the best you can, and tell people that if you can hold on a piece of federal land in Nevada for 5 years and keep your life, the land is yours. I don't care. What stops me from being open borders, or rather in favor of open borders, is that we are a welfare state and we cannot afford to keep on welfare every fucking asshole who wants to come to this country, because that would be somewhere around 5 billion people in this world.
No, and we don't have to go from one extreme to the other. We can have all we have to do is just control the border. That's all. Build all the fences, use all the drones, build the watchtowers, whatever, and then deport,
and then have a agricultural workers visa, so that Mexican agricultural workers who come for the tomato harvest in Florida, or the tobacco harvest in North Carolina, or the strawberry harvest in California, assuming you have another one, because without water that's more difficult, or lettuce in around Chicago, you can do that, giving them a visa. They can come in for 3 months. They always come and go. They don't want to stay. They leave their families behind. They come work for 3 months, then go and work over there for 3 months. It's kind of like the swallow worker. Why not, instead of paying $8,000 to a coyote, why not pay $50 in the consulate and come in with a 6-month visa to work in the fields? And then instead of having border patrol agents chasing these families around or these people around, they can chase the bad guys, because these people come through the door, go to North Carolina, harvest the tobacco, and get the fuck out. I don't understand why we are discussing this still. It was a proviso of the law that almost everybody backed in 2006, and it was shut down because Obama wanted immigration as a ram for the elections.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's another good sign. Obama is nothing now. He's lost whatever influence he had.
no, please.
You know, he
What the fuck is going on with Moonshell?
no idea what.
Well, she's disappearing from social life. The latest pictures, other than showing her with a degree of ugliness that surpass anything I've seen before, she's always wearing a hanky on her head. And I'm wondering if she's having some serious trouble.
Well, apparently, a huge number of celebrities have ruined themselves with something called Ozempic, which was a medication to treat diabetes, and
Yeah.
so they're taking it for weight loss, and the problem is that it wrecks your stomach. So
And liver.
there was this video put out by this skeletal blonde person, and it turned out that this was Kelly Osbourne, who has always been chunky, and both Kelly and her mother have been ruined by Ozempic, and the damage it does is that it makes it impossible for you to digest your food, so you become a living skeleton, and they're calling it Ozempic face, where you have this literal cadaverous look about you. Oprah Winfrey took Ozempic, and she's like a stick now, and
I just went today to say goodbye. Remember the friend I told you with pancreatic cancer?
mm-hmm.
Um, he's already in the last leg. It's a question of not days but hours. And I went to see him for the last time, and did a prayer in Hebrew with him, because I don't practice any of this shit, but my friend does. So you do. And his face on the door seal of death is an awesome big face. People who've taken Ozempic end up looking like a guy dying of pancreatic cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That sunken in face,
Mm-hmm.
where you can distinguish the contours of the skull.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that if you have uncontrollable diabetes, you don't have much to lose. You can try Ozempic, and if it works, they may not have to cut off your foot tomorrow. But if you're otherwise healthy, doing this for vanity, taking the risk for vanity, what's wrong with these people?
Well, see, they're doing it because everybody else is doing it, and you see. Okay, I watch a lot of videos where it's like cosmetic surgeons discussing the latest horrifically dangerous TikTok trend, and it's like okay, there was a TikTok. Was she a dentist? Yeah, TikTok dentist, and she was sexy and she danced and did all that, and she basically wrecked the teeth of every single person who ever went to her. And, eventually she lost her license. Well, I think she may have been unlicensed. I don't know, but she was shut down because, she was a TikTok star. She wasn't a dentist. She somehow opened a clinic But, the people who'd been to her, they were saying, I've spent 80 grand trying to fix the damage she did to my teeth. And, so people see some woman on TikTok who says, I took Ozempic and I lost 150 pounds. Look. And they just rush out. And, okay, have you ever noticed in some of these commercials, they give you the name of some medication, Grozolplop. They say, ask your doctor about Grozolplop. They don't tell you what it does. They don't tell you what it treats. It just shows happy people, and they're smiling and holding hands, and they're looking at the sun. And it says, ask your doctor about it.
Yeah, they're fucking like rabbits having picnic with their children. It's a wonderful life, always. Hold on to your bridges. This is something I actually agree with RFK Jr. on. Oh my God! I didn't think that was possible. There should not be direct advertising of medical drugs to the general public. Period. It should be your doctor recommending treatment, and if you don't like it, change doctors. But having people go to the doctor, I want you to give me Ozempic because I want to lose weight. And unfortunately, half the doctors in this country will write the prescription.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have a massive shortage of doctors because despite what people think, doctors are being forced to take on patients that they'll never get reimbursed for. Yep. So,
Obamacare did that.
Mm-hmm. And so, okay, everybody the doctors are under pressure from the drug companies to write prescriptions. And, it's all about, I mean, okay, people criticize Trump for telling the drug companies that they would be immune from prosecution if they made the RNA COVID treatments, if they did it in record time. This is because without that, have gone for what they did. And, we'll see in the future if this was wise or not. I mean, we don't know. But that's a stupid term. Big Pharma's profit margin is like minuscule compared to
nothing.
So many other corporations. And the fact that the CEO gets a 7-figure salary or whatever, it's immaterial to what the corporation is making as its net profit.
Right. If you're managing a company with a budget in the billions of dollars, of course you have to pay your CEO well. It's the same thing that people want government employees of a certain level, say cabinet ministers or cabinet secretaries in the US, or the president and the vice president and Congress and the speaker. I don't begrudge their salaries because I don't want them to be hungry. I don't want them to have to resort to accepting bribes to keep their apartment in Washington and their home in Texas. Of course, we need to pay them well. When you have a company and the CEO and the CFO are handling billions and billions in research and manufacturing, of course you pay them well. Commensurate with the responsibility they have. What's the problem? What's the politics of envy?
I don't know. I mean, what other people are making has no bearing on your life, unless you're demanding that some of their money be taken and given to you, which is communism.
Yeah,
And you know,
or that these people have to work for free and give away the product of their research and manufacturing, which is communism. Have you noticed how they always want everybody to work for free?
well, Americans hate the wealthy and they all want to be wealthy. It's that dualism that plagues us. We're lecherous prudes. Um, we
There was a time in America where people admired the rich and wanted to emulate them.
Well, they still
It,
do.
it is it is a fucking socialism from Europe that brought in the second leg. They hate the rich.
Yeah, but it's more complicated. They hate the rich and they all want to be rich. If there isn't a single person on the face of the earth who would turn down $1 billion because they don't want to be rich. Not one.
Well, nobody said socialism is not a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's everybody's got an opinion, but they don't actually know what the hell they're talking about. And it's time that it's time that people stop being so childish and just barking out these opinions about things. Like Jane Fonda was on the Bill Maher show, and if what she was saying was true, this woman knows nothing about anything. Like literally just has no knowledge about any topic whatsoever, and
No,
it was embarrassing.
no. She is a complete and utter idiot. She is an airhead, a California airhead from the '60s.
Yeah, she made it to her 80s without learning anything.
No, without the benefit of a single bit of knowledge added to her empty brain. And of course, when she married money because she's such a fucking socialist, and she has such a fucking sense of solidarity with the poor and the downtrodden that she makes sure to nail Ted Turner and increase her bank account by several hundred million. Because they're hypocrites. They all are. I really have nothing but contempt for them. And I have nothing but contempt for the people that still hold on to Marx's class struggle bullshit.
Well, we're closer than ever to seeing all of that biting the dust just because, one Joe Biden really rammed home just how much damage a collectivist government can do in such a short time. And, turns out Americans don't like it. They like their freebies. They like their free stuff from the government, but they don't like paying, $6 a gallon for gas, and they don't like having armed Venezuelans taking over apartment buildings next door. They don't like any of this stuff. So I think Trump knows that he's got a hell of a lot to do in 4 years, and I think he's going to do it.
Well, we're gonna. The title of this show, "Let the Rebuilding Begin." It's gonna start at 12:01 on Monday. Literally, what is it now? 24? 36 hours from now.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I have to repeat it and tell it to myself all the time because, God, these 4 years were long.
They were long and they were entirely expected. When Joe Biden won, it was just like you people have no idea what's coming. The one thing I'll give Joe Biden, and of course it's due to his infirmities. When Obama, the last week of Obama's second administration was the longest week ever. He just was everywhere. He would not shut up. Everyone was talking about, they were talking about it as if he were being unfairly removed from power. And he was musing about, if only I had another 3 terms to really get it right. And with this guy, with Biden, he just stays out of sight. And every now and then he comes out and mumbles away at some speech.
And signs everything they put in front of him.
Yeah, what was this about Biden declaring that he'd proclaimed the 29th Amendment? What?
Yeah, no. He came out and he proclaimed the 28th Amendment. That is the law of the land. And he did it by executive order. There is a fucking problem. Only Congress can do that.
Yeah.
And part of the problem with the fucking ERA amendment, which is like it's worse than a baby born feet first. It was supposed to be ratified by 38 states by some date I don't remember now. I think it was in July of 1984. It wasn't. It fucking wasn't. Over the next, since 84, we're talking 40 fucking years. Illinois, and I think Kentucky, and ultimately Virginia, 5 years ago, ratified it. I don't know why. Because the thing failed already in 84. So that makes 38. What the Democrats don't tell you is that other 5 states withdrew their ratification. So you don't even have, number one, Congress never extended the ratification period. Therefore, whatever you do after the ratification period ended is null and void. If Congress had extended the period, you'd still be 3 states short. So what the fuck is the obsession of the Democrats with this piece of shit, which is 100 years old, the text, and about as useful as an ashtray on a motorcycle? Nobody gives a flying fuck about this.
No, it's definitely something from the past. I remember all the hype about it when I was in junior high school or something.
Yeah. The hype was that they needed only one more state that never came, actually. They needed 3 more states. And I remember in 1980, they were making a huge hullabaloo about it. You were in high school. I was already at NYU. And they were, because the time was running short. The first expiration date was in 82, then they extended to 84. It doesn't matter. It is a non-issue. And even if it had been done within the time frame defined by Congress when they approved it originally, It would be up to Congress to declare it, to confirm it, not to the president. I mean, this is ridiculous. But then again, you're talking about Biden uh, proclaiming a constitutional amendment out of his ass, as if a president of the United States could create a constitutional amendment. I heard in an interview Speaker Johnson talking about a visit with Biden where he complained to Biden that Biden's moratorium on uh, compressed natural gas, liquefied natural gas exports was hurting Louisiana. And Biden said, I didn't do that. Well, yes, you did. No, I didn't do it. I didn't suspend exports of LNG. Yes, you did. You want me to go out of the secretary and ask him for the printout of the order? You did. It's affecting companies in my state that had to close their export facilities because of these. And it's hurting a lot of people and it's costing us millions of dollars and it's helping Russia. No, all I did was call for some research on the subject. In other words, Biden did not have the foggiest fucking idea of what he signed, and I'm not surprised. Speaker Johnson didn't beat around the bush. He spoke clearly, slowly, and reproducing his entire dialogue with Biden, which makes him rather credible. Mm-hmm. So, who says that Biden knows he just proclaimed the 28th Amendment out of his ass? Who says he is the one who voluntarily let 2,500 drug traffickers loose, or 50 pedophiles and child molesters? Does he even know what he's signing? And if it should later be determined that no, he didn't know, what should we do other than throw those responsible in jail?
Yeah, Trump said the best revenge is success. And I wouldn't have a problem if entire departments were eliminated and positions eliminated. To me, it's not necessary to throw people in jail, although of course I wouldn't mind it. Like now they're all shrieking about, he's gonna weaponize the Department of Justice, and it's like, oh really? Where have I heard that before?
No shit. Wow. Don't tell me he's going to accuse Biden of being a tool for the Kremlin, and that when Joe Biden went to Moscow, he had prostitutes pee on himself.
No, I mean it's like Adam Schiff asking Pam Bondi if she could promise to not shred any January 6th evidence, and it's like, you just handed her the world's greatest straight line, you idiot.
Oh, come on. If I were Pam Bondi, I would say, no, I can't. I think Liz Cheney already shredded all of it.
Yeah.
Which they did.
Mm-hmm.
It is already quite known and proven that the January 6th committee destroyed a shit ton of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because when their tenure expired, when they lost the House, the first thing they did was destroy evidence to avoid a reckoning. And now they're worried
Mm-hmm.
that evidence might be destroyed. It's already gone, you fucking idiot.
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to blame it on her. They're going to say, "Look, there's no evidence. It was Pam who did it."
Yeah, but we all know, we all have it on record. It's been discussed. The only problem is we for the past 4 years we haven't had enough control to do anything about it.
Mm.
Now, I do expect, and I'm serious about this. It's not a question of revenge. Uh, I thought long about these things because I don't want to be the kind that reacts emotionally and wants revenge. But I understand that if, and I'll make a distinction, if somebody like Watermelon Head with a pencil deck does not pay for the damage he's done from this country, lying, pretending to have intelligence, undermining the President of the United States, creating a serious national security breach that was exploited by our enemies. If he doesn't pay for it, we're fucked long term. And that's what Schiff did. The same thing with Swalwell, who was accusing falsely President Trump essentially of espionage while he was having his dick sucked by a Chinese spy. So, and that wasn't a single occasion, if you know what I mean. Now, I understand that whatever they say in chambers, whatever they say on the floor of the House is protected. They can say whatever the crap they want, and they have full immunity for that. But whatever they say on the campaign trail isn't. Whatever they say on a TV interview isn't. And they have to pay for this. And we have to let it be known that nothing will protect you from paying your bill if you undermine this country's national security and decide to be a seditious asshole. They accused President Trump of sedition while they were seditious themselves. It needs to be fixed, and we have 4 years to do it. Now, if Chicken Schiff floats long enough to be a Democrat vice presidential or even presidential candidate, God forbid, for the Democrats, and we end up with another fucking Biden because we didn't do our job today, I wouldn't forgive ourselves.
Yeah, I don't see Schiff getting elected for anything other than the Californian position.
I never thought Kakala would be a vice president. I never thought Biden could be elected in his decrepit state of mind. We knew in 2019 that he was senile and she had an IQ of 30. And they couldn't be elected, and they were.
Well, I wasn't sure if he could be elected, but I thought they wouldn't have the balls to steal the presidential election. And once they did that and there were no repercussions, I think they thought, I mean, it's like, I watch a lot of true crime programs, and a lot of these say serial killers, they start out small and they keep getting away with it. And so they say, I can do anything I want. And then they do more and more and more and more. And, the Democrats, I'm pretty sure, I mean, judging by their reaction to this last election, they thought they had it made. They thought,
Yep.
Kamala is going to win in a landslide, and so therefore they didn't need to cheat because she's going to win in a landslide. Trump is over. Trump is
And they cheated. They cheated. There being cases of, as usual. The problem, by the way, is they couldn't cheat on the same scale because the
yeah.
situation was different. So Pennsylvania did not send mail-in ballots to every registered voter, only to those who requested it. And they tried and came damn fucking near stealing the Senate seat from McCormick, but they couldn't make up the couple of 100,000 votes they needed. I think that Trump won in Pennsylvania by a margin of more than 20 points, not 4. I think he won in Florida by a margin of 60 points. I don't think he won California or New York. But in some of these states, he won by a much larger margin if it weren't for the mail-in ballots. And you are going to see over the next 2 years a shit ton of cases of fraud. There's already a big one in Wisconsin. There is another one in Austin. And you're going to see a shitload more because they did whatever they could. Now, the fact that no more than 35% of the American people could bring themselves to vote for this idiot, together with not everybody sending absentee ballots to every registered voter beforehand, kind of hampered their game. But if their candidate had been more, how shall I say, reasonable, they might have done it. They might have done it. It's not like they didn't cheat this time. They did.
Yeah, I was talking about the presidency.
And the presidency, they did too, but they couldn't come close for these very reasons. For these very reasons. So they then concentrated on the House. They stole at least 20 seats in the House and 3 in the Senate.
Yep.
When the races were close, the reason they couldn't steal the presidency is that it wasn't close. There was a 30% gap. But when the gap was 5%, they did.
Yeah, that's why we need to make it a law that you can't count ballots after election day.
Well, you and I have discussed it since 2017. I think we agree on the outlines, or at least on the main points. One day for election day, stop with this early voting bullshit. One location, in person only. If you cannot vote in person, sorry. Next time, I hope you can. In person only, with some form of ID. I don't like national IDs. I despise the very idea of it. I don't think we should have it, and I don't think it would improve anything. But some kind of an ID, some kind of proof that you are the citizen involved. And it must be counted by midnight. And if you use machines, there has to be a paper trail. And you are supposed to be able to see the paper trail to ensure that's what you voted. And if we don't do that, and of course, there should be total, absolute, and inflexible prohibition of any kind of mail-in ballots. Period. End of story. So that's and by the way, this can be done by an act of Congress, and we have control of both chambers. And I doubt very much a single Republican would vote against something like this. And if they do, we're fucked. If we don't have this kind of act in place and enforceable by the midterms elections, we're going to get fucked again.
Mhm.
And by the way, the 20 that I said they stole from the House, that's in addition of the 10 they stole by manipulating the fucking census.
Mhm.
Because it should have been the other way around. We should have had 10 more seats for red states and less for blue states because of the population shifts.
Mhm.
Instead, we counted illegals, we extrapolated, and then the census admitted they were fucking wrong 3 years later once the apportionment had been done. Why don't we change it based on the final numbers of the census? That's another thing that needs to be done urgently. So I don't know. Those are my biggest worries. I think that we can fix it, and I hope we do.
Indeed.
Yeah. And Brad is saying, somebody said we need to preserve the absentee ballots for the military. Please, no. That is an inheritance from Roosevelt. Was probably the biggest weapon of mass political destruction to ever hit the United States. No, I'm sorry. When you're under the flag, you're neutral in politics by definition. There's a lot that George Washington wrote about that in its time. No, the military cannot elect their commander in chief. They should have no skin on who the commander in chief is. Because whoever it is, they're going to have to serve him and obey him equally. The same thing we were saying about the State Department applies to the military. They should have no mind of their own. If they want to vote, they can take a retirement. But while they're in uniform, they should not participate in politics. There's nothing that worries me more than the military active in politics while in active service. Because then the army becomes a political party, except that it's a political party with Abrams tanks and and planes and bombs. Do we want that? Should I tell you how it ends? I don't know.
Well,
Do you think right, Thomas?
I don't know what I mean. There's so much that we've ignored when it comes to the armed forces. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what percentage of them even bother to vote.
Brad Allen is putting down here, and I know it's right. Obama uh, passed a regulation allowing email voting in the military so that anyone serving anywhere in the world could send an email with their vote. That's vote integrity right there. Uh, I don't know if it is 10% of the military. I know the older folks that I knew mostly didn't, and didn't for this very reason, because you don't vote to elect your XO, you don't vote to elect your commander in chief. You have to serve anybody, whoever the people of America elect, you have to serve them equally. Uh, but I was talking not in our particular situation today, but in the general concept of not having the military participate in politics. Because in all the countries where they do that, the military becomes a political party.
Mhm.
Except it's a political party with the monopoly of weapons. Who can compete with that? Who can go against the military in Venezuela? Any idea?
Well, considering that the Venezuelan army has never actually fought a war, I guess.
No, but they can kill students and protesters easily.
Sure.
I always said, people, why Captain Astis, the Black Prince, Captain Astis of the Argentine Navy, the Black Prince that used to kill students and infiltrated groups, he surrendered in the Georgias without firing a single shot.
Mm-hmm.
And when people ask me, but they didn't fire a single shot, and I said, well, the enemy wasn't wearing a school uniform, so he didn't recognize him.
Mm-hmm.
When he saw somebody with military uniforms on the other side, he probably thought they're friendlies. Because throughout his military career, all he did was kill students. Do we want such an army? So I think we need to seriously, whenever somebody brings us up, because it is always the Democrats who will tell you, well, but how can you do away with the absentee ballot? That's going to damage the military. No, it's going to save them from something you started that should have never been done, which is the politicization of the armed forces. Another Trump nomination I like is Matt Lohmeyer as Undersecretary of the Air Force, says Deb. He was commander of Space Force, who Biden ousted for being anti-DEI. That is correct, and he seems like a nice guy. And he didn't see it coming. Uh, in a public meeting of sorts, he spoke. Trump was speaking, and he spoke to Trump and said, I was pushed out of Space Force because I spoke against this and that. Are you going to do anything about that? And Trump answered, yes, you're going to be the next undersecretary for the Navy. You should have seen Lohmeyer's face. He's like, holy fuck, what? And yeah, he was serious. And it's one of the best moments that I saw in American public life recently. And he seems to be an okay guy. And he was right in blowing the whistle on DEI. And hopefully, he's going to be great in the new team that Trump is putting together to do away with male generals with dicks and skirts. It's God. The things that Biden and the Democrats have done in the past 4 years, they set us back at least 10 to 15 years on everything. We need to rebuild the military. We need to rebuild our control of sea routes. We need to rebuild our control of both the passages in the Suez and Panama canals. We need to rebuild our supply lines. We need to rebuild our energy production. We need to rebuild our industrial base. There's very little these fuckers didn't damage. Very little. And Trump, other than his ideas and all that jazz, this ability to seize the moment like he did with Lohmeyer is an excellent trait on any leader. Anyway, Alice is saying, it's crazy. My son and I wanted to vote for Trump from London. We didn't because I didn't trust in the absentee process. Yeah. JFK started it. Nixon owned it when I went to Vietnam. Voting never occurred. No, Michael. Actually, Franklin Roosevelt started it so that our boys in Europe could vote. There was another instance during the Civil War, but for most of our history, there was no vote from the military because Washington set the parameter very early on that the military should be totally free from political interference. They shouldn't be involved in politics at all. And for the longest time, that was the mentality of our officers. Then we ended up with fucking Lloyd Austin. Did you see the people in the Pentagon, Thomas, clapping and giving Lloyd Austin a big send off with a standing ovation?
Yeah.
I wonder if we have sufficient beds in bases in Antarctica or the Arctic stations to send all of these fuckers over there.
Well, when the head of the ATF resigned, he's the guy who unilaterally announced that rifle uppers were now machine guns. So they presented him with an upper, and he giggled. He went, hee hee hee.
Holy fuck! And what about the little son of a bitch who released top secret materials he stole in Telegram detailing the Israel plans to reply to Iran's missile attack?
Yep.
They just let him out with a slap on the wrist.
Well, of course. He's a hero.
For much less, we have put people in the electric chair in this country.
Yeah, but we can't do that now. That would be mean.
You're right. It would be mean. Let's put him before a shooting squad.
No, I mean, just as long as Biden's gone and we never have to hear from him again. I mean, I'm assuming they'll have a state funeral when he goes. It'll be like Jimmy Carter. Well, people will say, "Oh gosh."
Yeah. But I'm very disappointed with Jimmy Carter. They never put the urinal in his casket like I requested, because I wanted people who were going to see him at the rotunda to be able to relieve themselves And what better place than a urinal on the casket itself so we can pee him on the way out? 21 hours, 55 minutes, and 30 seconds to the end of the left administration, says Brad, who's obviously not counting this. Less than a day. No, it cannot be this. You're not counting right, my friend. You're counting to midnight on Sunday. You should be counting to noon on Monday. You're missing 12 hours here. Will everything be easier or harder for Trump this time? Asks Poser.
Easier.
It okay.
Because he knows what to expect this time around. And
Yeah, I was gonna say it differently, but the same thing. The nature of the problem is the same, as difficult as before. But now they know what they're dealing with. Now they seem to have learned the consequences of living the Obama nights and Bidenites unmolested in the West Wing. It's not going to happen this time.
No, they're already warning them it's not going to happen.
And there are very, very good people, starting with Mike Waltz, have made it perfectly clear that he expects the resignations at 12:01 on Monday, and if not, he's going to fire them anyway. So might as well just walk into the sunset. There are a number of other. There are some things that I don't know if they're going to go as deep as I would. Kind of like, will they finally dismantle the Department of Education or the Department of Energy? Will they cut off the wings of every alphabet city regulatory agency? I don't know. I'm hoping for it, but I don't know. It seems like a Herculean task.
Well, if it's going to happen, then Trump's going to do it in a way that nobody expected. He's not just going to announce from this day forward there's going to be no Department of Education.
Yep, we'll see. Anyway, we're coming up to the time. So, folks, we have almost 1,200 people watching right now. If each one of you sent a buck, $1, we'd be able to produce all of our shows without busting your chops ever again. That's not going to happen. So we're counting on those of you who do appreciate us enough to keep these shows on the air to either contribute through Odyssey, which, by the way, there's changes coming there. Apparently, Odyssey is having a sissy fit with Stripe because Stripe requested Odyssey to cancel accounts. Yeah, because those accounts did not comply with the terms of service of Stripe, which would have been okay. But apparently, they also asked control over all accounts so they can intervene on their own. And that was a red line that Odyssey did not want to cross. So maybe next month we're going to have different ways to support us because the current one may suffer some harm. I don't know yet, and I will let you know as soon as we do know. In the meantime, you can still use this system as set up. You can come to Odyssey and either click on support and send a contribution to the channel. The dollar sign in the chat and send the tip through the chat. or join and become a member of the channel in one of four different categories with some freebies. One of the freebies for ambassadors, we're going to be having a dinner in DC in March. So there you go. If do you accept PayPal's exposure index? Yes, we do. I was going there. Regardless of what happens with this stuff, there is always this link, quadverum.com/support us, and that one help us support this channel and Quadverum Forum. All the money goes to the same activities. And this one, you will be able to use credit cards or PayPal to send either a one-time contribution or a monthly contribution, all of which are very much needed and very much appreciated. And last but not least, ever since we started doing this through Twitter, we have a subscription in my timeline. Can't have it in Thomas's yet. And you can subscribe with $5 a month, which goes to support the whole thing, and get some old threads as we are able to post them. And with that, all I have to do is thank you very much for being with us tonight. And yes, the son of a bitch is gone in a day and a half, less than a day and a half. And I can't tell you, I was so despondent for you. I was more upset than despondent, but I was despondent that we had sunk to the depths of a son of a bitch with Alzheimer's. Because never forget, Biden may be senile, but before he was senile, he was a son of a bitch and a con man of the first order who fucked us from the House and then from the Senate for a half a freaking century. He enriched himself and his criminal brood for over 50 years at your expense. The idea of having that character as President of the United States, to me, was singularly disgusting. Add to that the blowjobber that he brought in as vice president, and that threw me into a pit of despair. Not totally. You and I both said, well, we're going to have to grind our nose to the ground and work as much as we can, and we're going to bring Trump back. Trump is back. Now it's a brief time to celebrate, and then we need to get to work, doing whatever we can in our corner of the world to make Trump's job easier. We cannot expect everything from the man. We have to do our share. And we do that by working with our Republican Party committees, by working in our school boards, by working in our counties, because this is not a job for one man. We didn't elect a Stalin or a Saddam. The Democrats do that. We elected the best possible man for the presidency today, but he won't succeed if we don't work with him at every level of society. Some will be able to do it, like Hank said, from a position of privilege. Others will do it from their local county Republican committee. Start working now for the midterms. A year from now, we're going to be in a campaign season. We have a majority that is the smallest since this creature was invented. We need to win more seats. Work like hell, especially if you live in uh, districts where the Democrats had to either steal the election or manage to edge a small victory. Work like hell to elect a Republican 2 years from now. If we lose the House in 26, we will be royally, thoroughly, and utterly fucked. We will make Trump's job impossible, and it'll take 10 years to get back to where we are now. So, right now, the best thing that you and I can do is help Donald Trump and work our ass in our districts to ensure that he has the support he's going to need in Congress 2 years from now. And keep, if you already have a Republican, keep the fire under his feet to get the Election Standards Act. And make sure that they don't slide back and give us, well, we reduced early voting from 21 days to 14. Fuck you. Well, we put a limit of 7 days for counting votes. Fuck you again. Make sure that you keep the fire under their feet so that we have an Election Integrity Act that actually works. And it's very simple. And you can always continue having this conversation with us at quadverum.com. And God forbid, maybe even drop a buck or two. And for that, what do I say here? So Maduro wants Brazil to send their military to take Puerto Rico, apparently. What is it? They ran out of scotch in Venezuela and now he's drinking gasoline? Who gives a shit? Christ. Brazilian can hardly keep control of their own people, by the way. Midterms, yes, I encourage when they do fantastic, brave things. Yes, indeed, Lisa. Thank you so much. When your representative does the right thing, make sure you let him know too. No, let there be carrots with the sticks. They do respond to this, by the way. All of them. Have I already bored you, Thomas, or do I have a couple of seconds more?
I'm good.
Okay. Anything to add to all of this crap?
No, I think we covered what I wanted to cover.
Okay. On that note, one second. Don't forget to send money, people. I had to say it one more time. On that note, do you have a last word for us tonight?
Alineate.
Delineate or alienate?
Alineate.
Alienate. There we go. Thank you so much. And God bless everybody. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow at the quad meet at 10:30. And try to be sober because I know we're going to be in a celebratory mood. Good night, folks. Thank you so much.